A one and a two and a chick-a-boom a chick.
Business is all about solving problems, and Remodeler's Autopilot solves a business problem that you have. You did a wonderful kitchen remodeling project for a client 2 years ago, and unfortunately, you haven't stayed in touch with them at all. That's a problem. Your clients are your most valuable marketing asset, and we want to consistently stay in touch with them with a monthly email and with consistent social media posts. But it's hard. You are a remodeler. You've got a lot of different hats and responsibilities, and that is what Remodeler's Autopilot will do for you. It's $147 a month. It is a simple month-to-month agreement, and it makes staying in touch with your previous clients and prospects painless. You can see the details below. Hopefully it is super clear to you how it works. You can see the examples, and I anticipate, like a lot of your remodeling peers, you're going to go through this page and say, this is kind of a no-brainer. Let's give this a shot. Would love to have you as our newest Remodeler's Autopilot client. Welcome to the Remodelers on the Rise show. I have longtime client and friend, Audra Gossage with LTD Builders from probably still hot and humid Florida. Is that true, Audra?
It is. It is still Florida hot around here.
Yeah, it's 64 degrees and fallish up here in Michigan.
Nice.
It's very nice. And Cassie, who's producing in the background here, she just held up her little pumpkin spice. Evidently, pumpkin spice is already out in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Fall is arriving, unless you're in Florida, then it's still warm. But then you guys get to enjoy the winter.
That's true. We do have that to look forward to, which is what gets me through every summer and fall.
Fall, quote unquote, she says, if you're not watching the video version. She is the founder and creative director. When did you add that creative director part to your title?
About a year ago.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good description. So
I like it. It does make good sense. Audra and I have done one-on-one coaching for a number of years. We were originally introduced through Nate Baum with Nate's Custom Renovations in Lincoln, Nebraska, your hometown, I do believe. And you guys knew each other through so-and-so, through so-and-so. So that was the original connection. Shout out, Nate. Thank you for that. And lately, over the last 2 years, she's been in one of our peer groups, and she is running a growing and wonderful remodeling business down in South Florida. Today, what we wanted to do is kind of capture some of the your story of kind of how you got into business and how you got going with your business. And then also I had emailed like, hey, this is one of the things I think is kind of your secret sauce, like the key thing that's really helped you grow your business. So we're just going to kind of go into several different facets that Audra sees and that I also see have been really key to helping her grow a profitable and solid remodeling business, all while making our clients happy with the process. So Audra, if you were to give us a little bit of the history of you and your business, what would that sound like, ma'am?
Well, I started, I got my degree in construction management. So I always intended to be in this industry. But I started out working in production home building. So that was a good, solid, I would say, start to the industry and working around home building and that kind of thing. But it was maybe the wrong time for it because I came into that in 2005 and just kind of rode a downward spiral for a long time as the housing market collapsed on itself.
Let's just have a moment of silence for that 2007, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody just went down memory lane. Yeah, some people went down memory lane there.
It was a tough time for anyone who was around during that time. And
how long could I have kept that moment of silence going before you'd have been like, Kyle, we should move on?
I mean, maybe in another 5 seconds.
Yeah, I thought it was even at 3 seconds, it was already like that was a long pause.
It's getting there, yeah. So after that difficult situation, I eventually lost my job in home building. But I rode it all the way to the very end. So there were no jobs. by that time. And I recognized that people were not buying homes, but they were renovating. And at that time, I had really taken an interest in the HGTV boom, I guess, with, flipping houses and design stuff on TV and that kind of thing. And so I was like, maybe I could get into renovation. So I was introduced through a friend of a friend in the business to an investor who was looking for, I would say, kind of young blood to help him do some condo flipping locally to me. And he turned out to be an incredible mentor. So I worked with him in a old neighborhood that had a lot of condos and houses that needed to be brought up to date for several years. And that was kind of how I got my introduction into renovations. And then I eventually kind of outgrew that and broke free and started doing kitchens and bathrooms on my own. And then that, let way into bigger projects like condos and additions and full house renovations, which is really kind of the bread and butter of what we do now.
And what prompted you to kind of go that construction management route, even kind of in college?
Well, I thought I wanted to be an architect when I was a kid. I always liked the concept of building things. I was really big into Legos and erector sets and doll houses, even like miniaturized things that I could create. And then when I got to architecture school, I found out that architecture is a very art and design driven degree. And I am much more of like a math person. So what I thought was always right for me wasn't a good fit when I got there, which was a difficult discovery. And, but thankfully I had some good guidance and was kind of guided back to the College of Engineering. And then within that, construction management really stood out as an area of interest, especially for like a good, solid and interesting career. So they kind of directed me that way, and the rest is history.
When you just said that, I remember you telling me about that in the past, where it was kind of like, man, that was you said it was a difficult kind of realization, but somebody did kind of guide you there and say, okay, I know that that's the path you were going down, but look at this path, and here's kind of where that could take you. And it went from like, oh, this is like horrible to, oh, this is probably even better. And it reminds me a little bit of kind of just speaking truth to people, like especially as we get to know one another, as we get to know trade partners, as we get to know employees, as we get to know friends and family members, that if that person wasn't willing to have a difficult conversation with you and kind of tell you, hey, I know this is going to hurt, I know this isn't going to be what you want to hear, but here's what you need to hear. It's a good reminder for all of us.
I totally agree. And it was a pivotal time in my life because what I thought was my dream was falling apart, or that's how it felt at the time.
Yeah.
But it really gave way into what I believe was my calling. Like I feel very fortunate that I think I've landed exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do.
That's great. So LTD Builders kind of started in what year technically?
Technically, we were started in 2009.
Okay.
But the LTD Builders, as we know it now, really started in 2016. That was when I started doing truly like home remodeling as like a standalone, getting away from like the investor flipping type of stuff.
Got it. And that was probably around the time, if not a year or two after that I think we connected. Do you remember where things were when we connected, or why you had kind of been reaching out?
Yeah, well, I specifically remember when you and I connected because I was pregnant with my son at the time, or maybe it might have been just before I was pregnant with my son. So that was around 2020. And so when I started in I say like from 2009 to 2016, it was very like investor heavy. So it's a different kind of business. From starting in 2016, which is where I kind of say where we started in terms of LTD as it is today. I recall that the first year we did 300,000 in revenue, and I thought that was really great. And the next year, I think we did 700. And the year after that, we did a little over $1 million, so it was doubling or almost doubling year over year. But when I got to that 2020 to 2021 area, it was like I had a business, I was making money. It was, it felt like it was going okay, but I felt like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I had no one to ask. And I didn't have peers to speak with. I didn't know that this kind of a community existed. I didn't really know that business coaching for remodelers was a thing. So I was lonely and I was really in need of guidance and I didn't know where to find it. And that was how I started reaching out to other remodelers who looked like they were doing well and looked like they were doing the level of stuff I wanted to be doing, which was how I ended up talking to Nate about you. And that was where we connected. And I think, I thought that my business was healthier at that time than it probably was. But my expectations were a little bit skewed because I didn't know what to expect and I didn't have any friends in the industry to talk to about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there we go. Several origin stories all kind of tied in together there. And here we are in 2025, and you've got a solid foundation laid on the business. You've been building on that foundation for the last number of years, starting to build the number of team members that you have, the types of projects that you're doing. So let's talk about kind of some of the success, especially over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years as you've been growing. I think one of the areas that maybe I'd like to start with is you've put a lot of focus around being process driven. Whether that be kind of how you're working in the process with your trade partners, with outside designers or architects, kind of how you approach that. Tell us a little bit about kind of that area of things for you.
Sure. I guess starting with the trade partners, most of the trade partners that are working with me today have been with us from more than 10 years ago. Not all, but a solid handful of them. I feel a lot of these guys really taught me the business and taught me the business that we are in now. So we have really solid relationships. But I learned early on that building trust and relationships with trade partners has a lot to do with money and how you handle their money. So I did things differently than what the way I perceive a lot of builders, at least that I was familiar with, do in building that relationship on trust with, first of all, making sure that I cash flow my business appropriately so that I always have the money to pay my people. And that's my staff as well as my trade partners. And then being consistent and fair in how we handle payments. And I learned right away that frequent payments, like being paid every week on Friday for the week for the work done the week before, is really important to them. Even though you can get away with paying once a month.
You're talking plumbers, electricians, you're talking drywall, you're talking tile.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. All of that. And you can get away with paying them once a month. That's what we did in home building. You can certainly get away with paying them every other week. But I found that they like to be paid weekly. And I learned as I experimented with this that when I became a consistent payer, there was never a, hey guys, sorry, I'm gonna have to wait until this client gives me a check so I can give you a check, or, we're gonna have to send someone out to check the work and see if that really happened. None of that. It's just if the work is done and you submit your invoice by Monday at the close of business, you will have a check on Friday. And that by itself has created more relationship and trust, I think, with me and the trade partners that we routinely work with than anything else that we've done.
Interesting.
We also, of course, my entire team knows my goal is to be the easiest GC that they work with.
You're going to expand on that in a second, but one thing I mentioned there is I heard there was I found that they really appreciated and enjoyed getting paid weekly. What that means is we're taking it off of, right, like you said, rightfully so. We could pay them once a month. We could pay them every other week. But if I put myself in their shoes and I'm also paying attention to how they respond when I call them and how they respond or how much they appreciate it, if I do more of that or I do that consistently, maybe there's going to be some more loyalty and trust coming back. So even if that's not for your trade partners, your team members, necessarily just money, and it's something else, paying attention to what they appreciate is a good nugget there. So you were also saying you've really thought, organization, and go ahead.
Yeah, that was something that, looking at the evolution of my business, I remember very early, I had a particular plumber who was a bit of a prima donna. I loved him, but he was maybe the highest drama person I was working with at the time. And I would call him and say, hey, I'm ready for my plumbing rough. And he'd say, okay, I'll be there tomorrow. And then he would call me the next day and say, I stopped by your job. It's not ready. What do you mean it's not ready? Well, this, and this are missing. This is in the wrong place. And I'm like, well, can't you just do what you can do? No, let me know when it's ready. These are the things that you need to do. And, I look back then, a lot of the guys would say to me, hey, Audra, you're missing these things. I was never afraid to say, okay, don't judge me. I don't know what you're talking about. What am I, what was supposed to be done here that isn't done? Well, you don't have the cabinet guys never came out and marked where the cabinets lay out. I want those cabinets marked so I know that where the sink center is going to be. And, and I'd say, well, we have the plans. Yeah, no, I want the cabinet guy to come and look at it. Okay. But I would ask them, and I was never afraid to ask those questions. And I do think, people ask me a lot if that's like a gender thing. Is it easier as a female? I think it probably is. I never had any ego attached to it or, was trying to prove anything. I felt very comfortable asking the questions and found that they were always very happy to answer them. So, but I learned it's like my jobs were slow because every time that I needed something, even if they were trying to accommodate me and okay, I did as much as I could, but now you got to have this guy come out and do this. But I was taking notes and I was asking the questions. And I learned that when we really started to get our act together in having like an organized schedule and making sure that things were happening in the right order, when they could count on me that when I called them and said, I'm ready for the plumbing rough, we're actually ready. And he could send 3 guys out there and they have work to do for the next 2 days. Now I could get them on a dime. And they would share things with me like, well, I did have this other job, but that guy only pays every 30 days. And we're going to, it's going to benefit me to have payroll ready this week. So I'm going to go ahead and move you ahead of him and we'll take care of yours this week. Oh, okay. So that's the feedback that I was getting that was like, okay, we're going to keep doing the weekly, payment thing. But yeah, the organization really, really makes a big difference because when they, you think about, and part of it is, I think, being respectful of their resources. Because if I set up a crew, whether it's electric or plumbing or drywall or trim or any of that, they get their materials ready. They send 1, 2, 3 guys out there. And if we're not ready for them to work, then they're in a scramble trying to find somewhere else to send them. They lost 2 hours in transit going to my job and then going to a different job. And they will take that out on you one way or another, and rightfully so. So, that was one of the things that I learned early on when I started getting that feedback that, you're the easiest GC I work for. Oh, really? Okay, tell me more about that. And then trying to really expand on that because I found that if I'm the easiest GC that they work for and I am the promptest payer, basically I have my own crew that will do anything I need them to do. So that has been the cornerstone to all of our success, in my opinion.
Wow. Organized, professional, respectful of their time, their energy, their money. And that is, we've seen that just as I've watched your business that, man, so you don't have much as far as in-house field team, but wow, your team seems to show up. Your trade partners seem to show up. You seem to have a really good gel there. And you just gave a little peek on some of that. You said the cornerstone to so much of what we do and being curious and being willing to say, okay, that's going well. How can I double down on that? How can I triple down on that? That's something that all of us kind of need to hear and think about how we can apply that into our business. Cool. So that's kind of the process side of things. Let's talk about the technology side of things. What does that look like in your business and how has that kind of made an impact on your overall experience that clients are having and just in how you're managing things?
So the number one technology tool that we use is Buildertrend. I started using Buildertrend, I think in 2018, maybe 2017.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Right? And boy, I remember when I first signed up for Buildertrend, and this is not an advertisement for Buildertrend because now there are options. There were really not that I know of at the time. But when I first signed up for Buildertrend, it was like, boy, this is like hiring a whole full-time person. Like it took so much off my plate in scheduling jobs. I was doing everything with like Excel spreadsheets before that and invoicing with that. I don't even know how in the world we did anything. No wonder it was, disorganized. But Builder Trend really streamlined all of that. And we started using it. And I tell other, newer contractors that are getting into this, if you're getting into technology like this, start using it just for one thing. So, and that's really what we did. We started using Builder Trend for scheduling first. Then once we got comfortable with that, then we put the proposals and estimating in, started doing that there, then invoicing, and you build on it, and it's not so overwhelming, but it was wildly efficient for us in organizing the jobs and organizing all of those components. And then I've always used QuickBooks. It's like that love-hate relationship that I think most of us have with it. But it works really well for construction businesses. It integrates really nicely with Builder Trend. So we're able to keep our money very organized that way. And I think that's a big piece to all of this.
When I look at your business on the technology side, and whether you're a remodeler who uses Builder Trend, or you're a remodeler who uses JobTread or something else, the components of it, we are doing our scheduling in there very clearly, communicating with clients very clearly, doing our estimating, our proposals, and our job costing very clearly. I can see that, just kind of going through those common things that a project management software can do for you. I've noted that is an area that you've devoted a lot of time and energy and attention to. You put a lot of detail in there related to your scope of work, related to your selections, related to making sure things are getting signed off and approved, making sure that your trade partners can log in and see some of those details to kind of reduce the noise of phone calls and people reaching out. So I think technology, your embracing of that has been kind of another key thing, which you explained really clearly there. Anything else you'd add to that? If not, I'm going to go over to the next one that is related to, we did process, we did technology. I was going to talk about money next.
Perfect. The only thing that I would add to that, Kyle, is I think reducing the noise is really the key feature here. That was when you said that, it just reminded me that was the first thing I noticed when I started using Builder Trend was my clients started calling me 90% less. It was like a 90% reduction in phone calls because they were always calling to find out what got done, what's happening next, what is going to be, who's here tomorrow, who's here next week. When we put the schedule online and got the schedule accurate and started posting photos of the jobs not even every day, every few days, it just, all their questions are answered. So that's a big part of it is, and I tell my team when we're putting information in Builder Trend, for example, if we're doing selections with tile, I want you to imagine that you need to give the installers all of the information that they need to install this job right here in this portal. And there's going to be no way for them to communicate with you after this. And when you think about it that way, all of the information gets communicated effectively. Are there questions? Sure, but we're able to reduce them by literally 90%. So it makes everything work a lot faster.
On the money topic, let's say you're a remodeler listening to this fine podcast, this Remodelers on the Rise podcast featuring Audra Gossage, and you are going to talk to a remodeler and say, hey, when it comes to the money side of things, here are some tips. Here are some important things, whether they're new to you, whether they're reminders to you, they've been integral, I think that's the right way of saying it. Integral in my business. Is that the right way of saying it? The more I say it,
I think it's integral.
Integral.
But now that we've said it so many times, it's going to be weird.
It's one of those words that when you're spelling something, you keep thinking about it. You're convinced that it's. But either way, people know what I mean. Very key is what I'm trying to say there. What would you say to your remodeling brethren and sisters?
Well, I'll start by saying that the financial side of the business I know is probably the most intimidating for most people. And it wasn't for me specifically and personally because I really enjoy money. My father was a wealth manager, so I grew up having these conversations about money management, and I pursued finance in my education. So I have a lot of background in that. So this part of the business comes pretty naturally to me. But I do think it's been part of what's made it easier for me to grow and run my business. So the one thing that I think has been extremely useful that always came naturally to me. So I did it from the very beginning, but I don't think it probably is to everyone, is that we always did job costing. I always wanted to know on this particular project, the client paid 100,000. We meant to spend 70,000. We actually spent 72,000. And that means that 18,000 is gross profit. And, back when we were a smaller business, the gross profit was all for me. Now, we have a team, we have payroll, we have expenses,
so now
the
office, look at that new office you got.
Yeah, we got a new office. So now that gross profit gets broken down, and now it requires even more management financially. So, but that was always important to me, and it's something that I always did, and I think that's really important. And then the other thing is, I never commingled money. So when my clients would give me a deposit to start their job, and we always required at least 50% before we started, we still do. Because I didn't finance jobs. My jobs were always too big for me to really be able to, to start it without money. Never had an issue getting that from clients. But when the client would give me money, I really don't feel like it's my money. And it's not. It's not my money until we do something with it, until we buy something with it or produce something with it. So I've always kept deposits separate from the operating money for the business. And then, now we do WIP accounting, work in progress. So our bookkeeper does, monthly reports to show us what we're actually producing each month in order to separate that. But that's always been important to me, that deposits go in an account that is that's where the client money lives until we spend it on their behalf.
It's a good reminder.
None of that is available for me or for any other part of this business to use until we've earned it by producing.
Yeah, another thing I noticed is that you're kind of a student of that financial side, and maybe it comes from Pops, who did kind of the financial advisor work and management work, but a business owner who is a student of finance, a business owner who digs into even understanding the investment side of things, understanding the tax ramification side of things, and then also where you started and where I would just emphasize, hey, remodelers, she started by saying, we've got to know our job costing. What did we mean? What did we expect to spend? What was our actual spend? If we're watching that closely on a job by job basis, we can't help but become more profitable over time. It's when we're moving too quick and we aren't paying attention to that things slip up. I mentioned the new office. Some of you are watching the video version. Right after this little commercial break, Audra's going to tell us where that picture comes from, and there's some writing on the little thing over your right shoulder. I'm curious what that says. We'll be right back, folks.
Glad you asked.
Do I have your permission to be a little direct? I heard a yes, so here we go. Remodeler's Autopilot is a no-brainer. If you did a kitchen remodel project 2 years ago, you handed over a wonderful project, and you haven't talked to that client in the last 2 years, that is not good marketing and not good business. Your previous clients are your most valuable marketing asset. Remodeler's Autopilot is super affordable, $147 a month. It's a month-to-month agreement, and you will consistently stay in touch with all of your previous clients and prospects through an email newsletter and social media posts each and every month. We do all the heavy lifting. It works amazing. Go to remodelersautopilot.com, and it takes you right to the information to sign up. All right. Oh, that was a cliffhanger. That was a cliffhanger before the commercial. So Audra, what do we have behind you?
This has been living on my desk since I bought it in Rome in 2015.
Oh, world traveler, folks.
Yes, I sat next to a really interesting man on an airplane once, and he told me this phrase, which means fortune favors the bold.
Fortune favors the
Greek. Bold. And so I saw this in Rome, and I bought it. And because I was like, oh my gosh, it always really resonated with me. That like
literally you heard it on the plane, and then when you were on the trip, he mentioned it.
Yeah.
Or you saw it.
And it was like, okay, that really resonated with me as a young entrepreneur, and it felt like it was meant to be. So
what do you think that what do you think that mean? Like, what does that mean to you? What has that meant to you at different, at maybe an example moment? And then what do you think it kind of means now?
Well, I've always had a high appetite for risk, which I think is a big part of what, brought me into entrepreneurial endeavors here and being a business owner. But when I was speaking with that man, he was an older man. I think he was an airline pilot, like a retired airline pilot. And he said, "Oh, I've always loved that phrase because it you make your own luck." That was effectively like
Hmm.
what he was, trying to convey to me. And I definitely picked it up. And um, I always considered myself to be bold and just not always in the best way, but if I wanted something, I went after it. And when things are scary and doesn't seem to be working out, I'm just resilient in that way. Like, nope, I'm going to figure it out. And I generally get what I want if I work hard enough for it.
Hmm.
So it's
Fortune
been like a
favors
good
the bold.
reminder for me to continue to be bold in my endeavors and continue to believe in myself and my business through the ups and downs and everything else.
Hmm.
So
Well,
yeah, that's
it turns out that could have been a super lame thing and been like, I don't know, is this trinket thing that I got at this flea
right.
market? But it turns out it's like a big thing, and there's a reason that it's front and center in
That's why it's
on your
on my
desk.
desk, Kyle.
Your
Yeah,
desk looks very
for sure.
clean. Also, is it normally clean, or are you just showing us the
Well,
clean part?
that's my non-working desk.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and with my fake picture on the wall, that's actually a screen. That's one of those
Ah,
yeah, one of the Samsung frame ones.
yeah.
So it looks like a picture, like a framed photo, which is nice. But when I am meeting with my team, I can mirror my screen there and they can sit in my office and we can
Very
all look
cool.
at the same thing,
Very
which is
cool.
really nice.
So
Yeah.
we hit on some process. We hit on some history, some process, some tech, some money side. If you could tell us about, I got two others for you, and then just any kind of wild card that we have as well. But talk about the people side of things. You've been adding some actual, not trade partners, but actual team members, W-2 team members. You married one of them.
I did.
And you grew up with another one of them, I think. So there's a little bit of family dynamic there. But what have you been
There is.
learning as you've been kind of putting your team together? What have you been learning? You've been using DISC a little bit more, and kind of just that leading of the team. Talk to us about the people side of things a bit.
Sure. I think when you and I first met, it was my husband and he was very new to the business at
Yeah.
that time. And then
Shout out, John. Shout out, John.
yep, shout out to John. Definitely got lucky there because I I married a guy. We got married in 2020, and I married a guy who was like the perfect fit to be the director of construction for this company. So up until that
I
point,
did see on Remodelers community, somebody was like, so, I'm looking for like a director of production, really solid production managers. Anybody have any ideas? And you're like, I just had to, I just had to marry mine because, once I found one, I was like, I'm
yeah,
just
good
going
luck
all
with
in.
that because
That
yeah,
was
good
funny.
luck with that. You should marry one if you find one because they're hard to find, right? But yeah, and we joke about that all the time. Like, what if he wasn't like that good at this? What would we have done? I don't know. Thank goodness he was.
Yeah.
But I was doing most of the field stuff. I was spread pretty thin back then. So when John and I decided around the time that we got married, he was looking for a career change. Personality wise, I knew he would be a great fit. And so we decided to bring him into this business and start running it together. Our business has flourished with that change.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge change for us because no one's ever going to look after a business the way that you do as an owner. So by having two owners now, running two different sides of the business, I think has been a tremendous benefit. But at that time, like when we met, it was us and one part-time employee who was kind of doing some of the bookkeeping and some of the payables. But that was really it. And what I didn't realize then that I now know is you cannot grow your business without growing your team.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, oh, when the business grows, then we'll hire more people. Well, how is the business going to grow? We couldn't, we couldn't take on the capacity or increase our level of service.
especially
without
as a
growing the team.
fairly safe conservative. You mentioned, fortune favors the bold. At the same time, you're a fairly conservative business owner. You're not
Very
quick
much
to
so.
just throw money out there and hire people willy-nilly. So especially that wisdom coming from you of going, what's first, the chicken or the egg? Like, are we going to be spread so wild and thin that we're then going to get desperate to hire somebody? Or are we going to kind of save up, get a nice little, retained earnings built up so that we can maybe proactively hire somebody, which will help us grow a little smoother? That's kind of what you just said there, which there's a lot of wisdom in it.
Yep. And that's effectively what we did. We recognized that we couldn't really get bigger without bringing more people in. Then I had my son. So having a baby brought a whole different level of dynamic and need for work-life balance for both my husband and I. And then that was, and I want to clarify too, we have 2 children from my husband's first marriage as well, but they were older, they were in school, like it was a very different dynamic.
Right.
Having a baby was a totally different situation.
Is he still an absolute bruiser?
Yes.
He kind of came out looking like he could take people down if he wanted to.
Yes, and he's still just all of that. He's huge, he's tall, he's all boy. So but yeah, we really, I personally had to really figure out a better balance, and so did John. And so we very conservatively waited and then hired someone. But I made the mistake with the first hire, the first couple of hires, that a lot of people do, that I just hired people like that I knew, or that someone had a friend that was looking for a job, and I think that I really chalked that up to a lack of confidence. I think I just didn't feel like I had the right or ability to go out in the world and like recruit someone. I didn't even really know what I was looking for. But it led to a couple of hires that were not great fits for the business or for the role, which marginally diminished my workload, but it made everything hard, right? So that was like the next big challenge. Like, so then the business was growing, but we were having some staffing issues. Also a little bit too slow to hire. So like what you said, I think it's great to be conservative. And I see similar businesses that go too hard on this. They hire too many people, they increase their overhead so much, and then they can't keep up. Like, that's a different problem that I don't want. But being too slow to hire it's like, you create like a 911 emergency, and then you bring a new person in, and it creates a lot of chaos with, even if you had the right candidate, which I didn't for the first couple rounds.
Right. So what'd you learn on these last few hires that has kind of helped you, other than getting outside kind of your personal friends and family and contacts? What else did you kind of learn this last time around?
Well, I really started focusing on learning how to find the right people. So I leaned on you as my coach. I leaned on the Remodeler community, which there's a lot of really smart folks in the Facebook group who are always happy to help, and said, how are you guys doing this? Like, if I want to hire someone for real, like I want to, and you have to think about things like pay and benefits, and how are you going to attract good people to, to work for you? How, like, what does that look like? And then where are you finding these people? And a couple of individuals who I think are, have good, solid teams and have spent a lot of time learning about this, shared with me that using disc profiling, which we had already been doing within our organization, thanks to you, using disc profiling for hiring had really benefited them. And I was like, okay, so that makes sense, because if you can sort the candidates I had one candidate in particular who was working for me. She was great. She was a great person. She had the wrong set of skills and personality and aptitude for this role. Like, it just was not a good fit. And it was very obvious to me. And it's like, now what do you do? And I realized, boy, if I can sort out everyone who's not a good fit for the role, and then only look at people who are literally personality-wise good fits, because I just feel that people really cannot overcome their nature. You ask people, are you detail-oriented? And they go, oh yeah, I'm very detail-oriented. I'm a good manager of time. they think that they are, but they either are or they are not. And I believe that these are innate personality characteristics that really cannot be changed very much. They can be adapted a little bit, but you're not going to get that highly detail oriented person out of someone whose brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. There's just different fits for different roles. And we need all of them for different things. So I really set out to recruit and find the right candidate to fill this position. And I used the disc profiling. I worked with you to determine what the optimal disc profile was. I used a recruiting site that that filtered accordingly.
Wise Hire.
Wise Hire is what we used. Yep. And so they would give me on every candidate, if they're, an excellent, good, fair, or poor fit, I eliminated all the poor fits and only interviewed, which eliminated almost all of them, by the way. So from like roughly 100 candidates, I got it down to like 10. And then from those, then you could look at experience and whatever, got it down to 4 or 5 candidates to interviewed those, and the clear right person stood out immediately. I hired her. She's been with us for almost a year, and it has really been tremendous. Because she has her brain works in the right way to do the job that I need done.
Yeah.
And so
I had a similar chat last week with a client of going, oh, he's so personable, and he's so fun to be around. And what about his attention to detail? No. What about like his desire to dig in and really develop scope of works? No. It's like, this person might be the right person in the wrong seat. Maybe there's not a seat, but in this case, it was for an estimator position. I was like, just describe to me who you'd want in an estimator. And they're looking at that. You pull up the disc, and it's just not their natural tendency.
It's not there. Yeah. And it's bad for the employee, and it's bad for the business. So, and letting employees go is in my opinion, the hands down, the worst part of owning or running a business. It is the worst thing. So I want to focus more energy on hiring so that I can avoid firing. And then once you have those people, trying to create a wonderful work environment for them so that they will stay. That's the name of the game.
Love it. And then tell me about the sales side of things. What are a couple, if we did a little rapid fiery on the sales side, what would you say has kind of been keys on that front? You're doing some big projects. A lot of your projects are 500,000 this, 700 that, 400 this, 300 that. Working with a lot of kind of designers or architects. What have you kind of seen on the sales side that's been key to improvement and success there?
Sure. Well, selling construction has become exceedingly difficult with inflation, because now, like you said, we're selling jobs that used to be 500,000. We now have to sell for $1 million and convince these clients that that's reasonable. And the other thing is we have a very process centered system. So we create a really great experience for our client and for ourselves, honestly, by doing that. But part of that is being really transparent and honest with the client very early in the process, which means telling them the real cost of construction up front. I found this to be a hurdle that has to be overcome, because I'm not going to say most, I believe many contractors do not. They're either overly optimistic or just dishonest. I'm not sure which, probably both. And so it's impossible for the client to be comparing apples and apples. So I found that in the sales process, I always start with that things are different. The way that things were when you last remodeled 10 years ago, the budget that you may have in mind, the expectations you may have in mind are different. So I always kind of jokingly tell them, whatever budget you had in mind, if you double it, will probably be in the ballpark, but it just kind of gets that out of the way. And then I explain to them how our process works, and doing design and development, project development up front, with a ballpark budget, and then tailoring that down and shrinking that ballpark budget down into an actual proposal that is a real project that we can build. And we want all the surprises to happen on paper. I hate surprising clients, especially financially. When you have their house torn apart, and things change and you need more money from them. It's like, it is what you say it is. They are trapped.
Yeah.
And I think that there are contractors who use that to their advantage. I've never felt good about that, and clients will hate you for it. So we try to, any financial surprises, anything that, where any direction that we think that it could go. Like I was just telling a client yesterday, we're not going to get 3 weeks into the job and say, oh, maybe we should change the doors. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Let's change the doors. $20,000 change order, add 6 weeks to the job. No, we're not going to do that because we're already going to have talked about the doors and whether or not we're changing the doors 4 months back.
On paper.
Yep. On paper, when you could look at the price and, and be able to make an informed decision then. So that's a big part of it. And I really spend a lot of time with that when I'm talking to the client. And then I feel like I also have to spend some time explaining to them the difference between the, shoot from the hip proposal. Oh, you got a proposal from this other guy. What did it include? What allowances does it have? What kind of scope development is involved? And just showing them that, this is where our industry is known for having 20 to 50% change orders, overages. My jobs have almost zero. And we design the whole process that way because change orders aren't good for the client. They're not good
that line's
for us.
really good, Audra. You better be using that in every sales call. You better be creating some content, maybe a little video content. Our industry is notorious for 20 to 50% of the overall cost being change orders. Our projects, we aim for zero. Ooh, yep. I like that a lot. What I'm hearing there is getting to the moment of truth early. What I'm hearing there is upfront planning. What I'm hearing there is making sure, no, we're not belittling or downplaying competition and others, but we're really articulating, look, we do it this way for a reason. I have zero desire to surprise you. I have zero desire to kick things down the road and change order you. Like, this is remodeling. Things may come up, but we are going to have this project planned and scoped out and detailed out on paper so that the project goes smoothly. I'm hearing that in a variety of examples you're given here.
Yes. And by doing it that way, it also allows us to do our jobs a lot faster than most of our competitors because we plan everything ahead. We're able to order everything ahead. We don't have material delays during the job. All of those things add up for a better client experience. And that's really what we aim for. It's really in my market in South Florida, there are a lot of good high-end contractors who do beautiful work. So I don't think that my clients are pressed to find a contractor who will give them beautiful work. In my opinion, the cost and pricing is the same across the board. I think, you use me, you use someone else for the same scope of work, the same type of project, it's going to be relatively the same price in the end. And so the main thing that sets us apart is the process. It's the difference of being able to get, like, we're doing, full house, 5,000 square foot, full gut renovations with structural work, with concrete work, adding lofts and second floors in lofted areas inside in 6 months. And a lot of other, my clients' neighbors are having the same kind of projects take 18 months to 2 years, which is no surprise if you're not planning ahead. But, that really sets us apart.
Or have relationships with trade partners like you do. I mean, it ties in a lot of stuff we're talking about here.
Yes, that's something that I think surprises every client we have, is just the people showing up. There's consistently work being done. There's never the proverbial, where is my contractor? Because it's been 2 weeks and no one's been at my job. We just don't have that. And part of it is our good planning. And a big part of it is the relationships. Our trade partners show up for us. If I call my guy, I could call any of my guys and say, I'm in a jam, I need you. They will be there. They will be there every single time. So I think that is, it's immeasurable.
It's interesting how we kind of started there and we kind of came full circle of, like, that also just enhances the experience, enhances your competitive advantage, all of those things. A story for another day is the speed at which you guys remodeled your home last year or the year before, where you really challenged, what would it look like if we were super, super speedy, where we kind of just moved over to this corner, we redid this, and then we moved back, and you had some reasons behind the timing of it. But the overall message of it was, the time in which if production takes a year versus it takes 8 months, that client and the end result is the same. That client that was out for 8 months, that's nice competitive advantage. That is great for the client experience. So keep thinking as you're listening to Audra there, what she's talking about is really, let's optimize how long things are going to take. Let's optimize how many surprises we're going to deliver. And just really so much of the process that you're talking about is focused on that client experience. If we were, Audra, if we were to just say, all right, as we wrap this up, you can either say, where's this business of yours going in the future? You could answer that question. You could say, you know what, hey, if you heard nothing else from me today, what I want to emphasize is the following, or anything else that comes into your mind. As my beloved guest here, how would you like to kind of wrap it up for our listeners?
I'll say this. What I think that the overall undertone of our conversation today was, and if I were to offer just one piece of advice to others in this field, I would say that my shifting of focus over the last 5 years to client experience has been the most beneficial thing I've ever been able to do for the business. And that it's very far reaching, because if you're looking at, if everything is about how do I make this better for my client? How do we work faster for the client? How are we more accurate for the client with fewer change orders and less confusion? How do we have better communication for the client? How do we have trade partners showing up for the client? And if you look at that
how do we build a team of in-house team to make it smoother for the client?
Who support our clients and who are here for our clients. And that's the feedback that we're getting now from our clients, is just like, your team is amazing. Like everyone is here for me. And that has been my dream. But it did take a focus shift for me to shift away from like almost like survival mode of like, because it used to be, how do we do it faster for profit? How do we have less mistakes for profit? And I credit you, Kyle, for really helping me to expand, my mindset on that. But when we shifted the mindset to how do we give our clients the best possible experience, not the most cost-effective experience. We are not there. They can do it for less. But almost always they're going to choose to have a good experience. And especially if they can really enjoy it and they hear that from their friends and their neighbors that like, I didn't hate my remodel at all. Like, yeah, it was a little inconvenient, but like overall it was a great experience. We would totally do it again. That's like, that will set you apart from all of your competition in your area, no matter where you are. So that's, I think, the number one takeaway for me.
I love it. That's that encompassed the whole thing. If you want to check them out, LTD Builders.com, or if you're ever down in southern Florida, it's kind of on the east. It's kind of on the East Coast over there, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. East Coast, down south, not
Boca
quite to
Raton
Miami
area. And let's see, we had one of our peer group meetings down there. Not to be all fancy, but we may have been on the ocean and just driving down there. Woo, there's some fancy houses down there. And some of them are beautifully remodeled by LTD Builders. Audra, thank you for kind of sharing your story, giving a little insight into kind of how the business has been on the rise, if you will. Sharing a little bit of Greek with us, a little technology with us. We covered all kinds of things. Did you and John get married early in 2020 or late in 2020?
We got married in June.
In June of 2020. So
it was
probably not a huge wedding then.
It wasn't, and it was planned to be a small wedding. We had 50 people. And I just kind of, along with my my fortune favors the bold, I just said, we're not rescheduling this wedding. And that was that. And everything worked out. So
ta-da. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. Thanks, Audra.
Thank you.
Cool. Ta-da.